The kitchen stitch is used for joining two sets of open stitches. The stitches should be open, that's why I didn't bind off stitches. I just left them on the needles, and you should do that too. If you keep a set of stitches on the scrap yarn or a stitch holder, then before you start seaming, transfer the stitches to a needle and transfer them in such a way that when you place the swatches or the pieces like that, so that the one is at the bottom and the one is at the top, the tips of the needles are on the right side. Another thing that you should do before you start seaming is to take care of the tails. For one piece it doesn't really matter, the tail could be short, but for the other piece, the one that I usually place at the bottom, this piece should have a long tail. The length of the tail should be at least 3 times the width of the work. If you're working on a big needles like these ones or even bigger, then make the tail even longer. It should be at least 4 times the width of the work. Of course, in real life, I would use the same yarn as I used for the work, but because it's a tutorial and I want you to see the stitches better, I attached a yarn in contrasting color, and I already hid the tails over here to make it look as if it's the same yarn, which of course it's not. So it's just for the demonstration, or if you want to make a decorative seam or something, but otherwise in most cases you would use the same yarn as the yarn you used for the work. Okay, so that's the setup. Place the pieces on a flat surface so that the one with the long tail is at the bottom and the one with the short tail is at the top, and then make sure that both tips of the needles are on the right side. Now take the wool needle and thread the long tail into the wool needle. And first, before we start actually seaming, we need to join these two first stitches, just to kind of give it a head start, right? And to do that, insert the wool needle from back to front into the first stitch on the piece at the bottom, and then into the first stitch at the piece at the top piece. Again, back to front like this. Then slip these both stitches off the needles and pull the yarn. But don't pull it too tight. Make sure that the strand that is left between these stitches is about as long as an average stitch. So see, this is kind of my average stitch, so I leave a strand a bit long here. So I'm not pulling it really tight. I want to have that strand here. And that's the setup. Now we are ready to move to those 2 steps that are quite simple. The first step starts at the bottom piece. So what we do, I'm going to move the needle behind so you can better see what's going on. Insert the wool needle from front to back into the first stitch. And I'll call this stitch the current stitch. Why? Because we already worked into it. It's kind of the stitch that's already in the work. So I go front to back into the current stitch, and then I go back to front into the next stitch. So I'll call this stitch the next stitch because it is the next stitch, right? So we go basically in the current stitch and out of the next stitch, just like this. Then slip the stitch off the needle and pull the yarn. But again, not all the way through. Make sure that this stitch is about the same size as the other stitches, just like this. That was step number 1. And now we move to the second step, which would be exactly the same but done on the other piece, the piece on the top. So we go front to back into the current stitch, the one that's already has yarn in it, right? And then we go back to front into the next stitch, just like this. Slip this next stitch off the needle and pull the yarn through, forming a nice stitch. As you can see, it completely mimics the look of the knitted fabric, and that's what makes the seam invisible. Well, of course, in this case you see it because it's in contrasting color, but otherwise it would be completely invisible if done with the same yarn. And that's it. These are the 2 steps. So we go at the bottom, in, out, off the needle, pull the yarn, form a nice stitch, top, in, out, slip the stitch off the needle and pull the yarn, forming a nice stitch, and again, in, out, slip the stitch, pull the yarn, in, out, slip the stitch, pull the yarn, and keep doing that until you join every stitch and the piece at the bottom to the corresponding stitch at the piece on the top, and form the seam right away. See, because we are not pulling the yarn tight and we are not leaving it loose, like too loose, then we don't have to reshape anything because we take care of the seam as we go, and that's much easier than kind of going back to it and trying to arrange the stitches in a different way. So one last time, I make the first step here and the second step over here, and now I put the needles aside because I don't need them anymore. And the last stitch would be the one to join once again the last stitch on piece at the bottom with the last stitch at the top. So we just go into that stitch and the other one and simply pull it tight or not too tight, depending on where the stitch is. If it is in this, if it's gonna be inside the seam, then it doesn't really matter. If it's gonna be visible, then make it the same length as the other stitches in this seam, and that's it. And then you just go to the wrong side and secure the yarn the usual way. Simply go under this strand and into the loop and pull the yarn, and here we go. That's our beautiful kitchen stitch.
This little knitting trick is great, but there are so many other effective and efficient ways to knit. I put together a free mini course about 3 knitting methods that will instantly make your projects look better and make you a more skilled knitter in less than an hour. Go give it a watch. The link is in the description.